Hey, it's Steve Sparky, Fifer, 1250 AM, The Fan. Follow me on Twitter at Sparky Radio. He is Nathan Marzion, Bucks super fan. Follow him on Twitter at Nathan Marzion. It is another edition of the Green and Growing podcast. Of course, you can always download the Green and Growing podcast on your Odyssey app. That's always the preferable way. But if not there, you can also download it wherever you download your favorite podcast at. That's another option. And then, of course, on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page, where we are currently streaming live as we're doing this here on Tuesday night at about 8:45 p.m. Central Time. You can always catch some of these videos on the Odyssey Sports page as well. We waited till later on Tuesday. Normally we record on Mondays now, but once word came out that Adrian Griffin was having his introductory press conference for the Milwaukee Bucks, Nathan and I decided to just wait till Tuesday night to do this after the press conference was done. All the individual one-on-one interviews were done to kind of go through everything that was said from Adrian Griffin and go at it from that perspective. So, Nathan, I wanted to read you one of my favorite quotes. It made me laugh out loud when I saw it. The quote was this. Ty Windish did a great job, by the way. Nice done, Ty Windish, from the Eurostep podcast, tweeting out quotes as this whole thing was going on. Defense wins. Obviously, said Adrian Griffin, we're going to be a proactive defense, pressure the ball. We're going to take the defense to offense. We're going to get turnovers and get out and run. We're going to make adjustments throughout the game and switch it up. This is what I started laughing at. We're going to make adjustments throughout the game and switch it up. I started laughing because I immediately thought of Bud. Kind of like this was the whole thing about why didn't you stop Jimmy Butler? Why didn't you run a double team at Jimmy Butler? Why didn't you put Giannis on Jimmy Butler? All this different stuff that we talked about. And he right away comes in and says, we're going to make adjustments in the game. And I think every Bucks fan probably started clapping when they heard him say it or when they read that he said this, quote, Nathan Marzion.
Absolutely, because it's the one thing that Bud struggled with. And, you know, Bud has a good system to begin with. He's a good coach. But in the playoffs, you know, your margin for error is smaller. And you can't just trust what's going to work in the long run. You got to be able to adjust on the fly, change your defense on the fly, throw out your game plan if it's not working. Because it's like you only have, you know, 4 losses to deal with. You don't have it's not an 82 game season where it's going to even out over time. It's do or die. And you know the Bud's philosophy just isn't a playoff philosophy. You know, we did win the title even with it and everything. It's not it's a good philosophy overall, but it's hard to consistently win that way. And to get someone in here who not only he's willing to make the adjustments, but I love what he said too about the turning defense into offense and, forcing turnovers and stuff like that. And he mentioned, he's like, I'm a defensive coach, but I really believe that a good defense can create a good offense. And that's very true. And
yeah, no doubt about it. And this is the one thing, that quote you're talking about. Griffin said, quote, I think being a defensive coach helps you on the offensive end. You see nuances. There's patterns I can pick up. I know how teams are going to play Giannis because I would incorporate the same schemes. We'll have a counter for everything. That could come back and haunt him at some point. That quote of we'll have a counter for everything. But either way, that is the advantage, obviously, of having the defensive-minded head coach. The other part of this, I am not surprised by necessarily. He talked about player accountability and so forth and holding players accountable. And it appears he's not going to be Thibodeau. He's not going to be Skiles. He's not going to scream and yell and carry on and get in guys' faces and go nuts necessarily. Or Jason Kidd, that'd be another one. But I'm anxious to see what actually happens when we actually get to that point. It's one thing to say, I'm not going to be like my mom. I'm not going to be like my dad. And then years later, you have kids and you're like, holy crap, I'm kind of acting like my mom and I'm kind of acting like my dad right now. And I'm kind of doing the same thing with my children as they did with me. So we'll see necessarily, how this plays out. Skiles is a former player. Kidd's a former player. So they know what they were doing and how they reacted to being screamed and yelled at and so forth. And obviously they didn't see a problem with it. And in today's NBA, you probably can't do that same thing. We've learned that along the way. Yet Thibodeau is still coaching. Kidd is still coaching. Skiles isn't. But the other two clearly are at this point. Nick Nurse, reports say that he's pretty much of a hard ass when it comes to his players as well, probably to a certain degree. So having all of these guys that he was assistant coaches for, and then to say, well, I'm not that guy, I'm intrigued. Okay. let's see. Let's see what this actually looks like once we get into the fray here and you actually get to be the head coach and not the good cop maybe to their bad cop as the assistant.
Yeah, and again, we need to wait and see. We got to obviously figure out and really see him, with the players and see how he's doing and everything. But this is kind of what I said when they hired him is, a reason to be optimistic is maybe he can give you some of the on-court philosophies that Nick Nurse gives you that we like, the defensive adjustment stuff and just being a good defensive coach without that personality. He might just be a different type of coach and a guy that isn't quite as harsh, isn't quite as much of a hard ass and is more, a little bit more caring towards the guys and just a little bit, nicer to work with. And so that could end up being, a positive. It could end up being a reason we look back and say, hey, this was a better hire than hiring Nick Nurse because we got what we were going to get out of Nick Nurse without that problem or that potential of, causing trouble in the locker room or whatever. And I mean, I wasn't really worried about that with anything. Like, I don't think there's much of a risk of causing problems in this locker room when you have this core together. But still, it's like if you can get a guy that, works well with all those guys and clearly they liked him because they wanted to hire him, that's got to, it's a good thing. And so, yeah, I'm excited that, with everything he said today. And I like too how he mentioned that he mentioned about in the NBA Finals when they went against Steph Curry, Toronto 2019, how they ran a box and won, and he kind of learned from that. And like just in that series, like I know Nurse kind of famously like threw out the entire game plan. They went into it and all of a sudden it was like, nope, we're going to change this whole thing up. We're running a box and one. And it's like, that is exactly the type of thinking that I want the Bucks to have, that we've wanted them to have for years, of not just sticking with this, long-term approach of like, it'll even out over time and just wait and trust it. It's like, no, screw it. If it's not working in the playoffs, like go to something completely different, throw them off, do something to try to change, your defensive look, change what the offense is doing, just throw them off a little bit. And so I like that he mentioned that because that was something I thought of why I wanted Nurse is I was like, man, like I remember him doing that in the NBA Finals. And so for Adrian Griffin to mention that and talk about how he learned from that, like, again, I like that it sounds like we're going to get some of the things we would get from Nurse, but with a more likable coach.
The other thing I found interesting was the John Horst perspective in all of this. I think we've all learned that Horst does not like yellers and screamers as head coaches, right? That's why I got rid of Kid. So not really surprised that that's what Adrian Griffin says. And I think if Adrian Griffin was like, yeah, I coach more like Skiles and Thibodeau, I could but guarantee you he's not getting that job. Okay, so now having said that, let's talk about what Horst said. Horst pretty much admitted that going in, he had a bias towards wanting a proven guy, a guy that's been there, done it, a guy that's got a track record of being a head coach, and heard good things about AG. So, okay, fine. We'll talk to the dude. We want to talk to as many guys as we can, so we'll talk to him. Maybe we'll learn some stuff about our team, whatever. Because sometimes that's what this is, right? Sometimes you interview guys for your job, not necessarily because you're going to hire them, but to get a different perspective on how they view your team, on what they think your weaknesses are, about how they game plan to stop your team and how they think, they can overcome the weaknesses that you have. Sometimes that's why you're interviewing certain guys, not because you're going to give them the job, but because you kind of want to see what they say. And I'm not saying that's what that was with Adrian Griffin, but I kind of feel like it might have been. And he was so good with his answers that they just kept pushing him forward to another interview. And they pushed him forward to another interview. And then after a while, they started talking about, okay, damn, maybe he is our guy at the end of the day. But Marzion, I'm 47 now, after we both just had our birthday. I've seen a lot of press conferences, a lot of general managers, all sports, baseball, football, basketball. Haven't watched many hockey press conferences, but I've seen a lot. In 47 years, to the best of my memory, I have never, ever seen a general manager refer to analytics as being used to find the next general manager for their team. Never in my life. Ty Windish, again, Horst said the analytics the Bucks use included a history of coaching and a scheme with variability. Quote, there's a lot of different ways to win, not only in the playoffs, but series by series. He's played for some of the most fearless and creative coaches, end quote. Man, get the heck up out of here with that. We're using analytics to find head coaches now. They put together numbers and formulas to figure out who they want to be their head coach. Marzion, I'm not much longer for this job, man. This is going to be too much for me, man. It's going to be too much, Nathan.
You know, I'm an analytics guy.
I know. Have you ever heard of this?
No, but at the same time, I mean, I know kind of what they're saying. They're probably looking at, how often teams ran certain, defensive adjustments and, like, again, the variability, like he said. Like, were they primarily in one scheme? Were they changing up schemes? How often? Number of possessions. I don't know how deep the analytics actually were.
I'm sure it went really deep.
I don't know. But it's like, and I mean, some of it is also looking at, okay, like with Nurse. Like, when I was looking at Nurse potentially being coach and like, okay, would I like this? I looked at, what is the Raptors offensive rating with him as the coach since he took over? And like the year they had Kawhi, they were top 5. So I'm like, okay, I know he's not looked at as an offensive coach, but his offensive rating was pretty good. And the one year he had a superstar, like that's the type of stuff I feel like you would look at, like just those basic analytics and all that. Again, I'm not sure exactly how deep it went. But I don't mind it. I'm a big analytics guy. I think you should have some type of evidence for why you're doing something rather than just, oh, I think this will work. Like, no, there's some evidence-based reasoning behind it, and so I like that.
As I've told everybody when they announce this hire, this better bleeping work. And I've not changed my stance whatsoever. This better bleeping work. Because
now, are you feeling better or worse after today about the hire?
No different.
Okay.
The Terry Stotts hire, which we'll get into in our second segment here. And then we got some Chris Middleton rumors floating around we have to get to as well. The Terry Stotts hire made me feel better about the hire. The Sam Cassell to Boston made me almost completely depressed for the rest of the day. That really hurt because I wanted Sam in the worst way, and I would have loved him as one of the lead assistants here too. And not getting him kind of sucks, but either way. Okay, here's some more. You were talking earlier about the box and one and all that stuff with Steph. Griffin tells a story of a defense that required Kawhi to expend a ton of defensive energy. Kawhi said, "Tell me what you want to do, and I'll do it," end quote. Players like Giannis, 2-time MVP, they want to be coached. He's made it clear from day one he's extremely open and on board. This should mean, now I hope I'm not reading into something as a media member, but this should mean, Marzion, that we're going to get Giannis against the other team's best player possibly more times than we have in the last, 6 or 7 years of Giannis's career. That would be what I hope this means, right? Am I reading into this? Am I being media guy, Marzion, or are you thinking this is what it means?
No, I mean, it definitely seems like that. It definitely seems like a pretty big hint at something like that because, again, Giannis is that type of guy that, like you said with Kawhi, where he's the guy that's like, tell me whatever you tell me to do, I will do that. You are the coach. I'm going to respect you. I'm not going to go off and do my own thing. I'm not going to go off and say, screw it, I'm taking the best player. He's going to listen to what the coach tells him. And again, Bud was just so stubborn usually with his defensive system that it was like, we're not going to use that card. We're not going to, we want to keep you in your help defense spot as a help side defender and as a roamer. We don't want to use you on the ball. And it's like, if what Adrian Griffin's saying is true, they're going to switch things up, try different schemes. At some point, you will get, if you're in a playoff series and things aren't working, you will, at some point, if you are making adjustments, get to a point where you're saying, all right, Giannis, we want you on the best player. Like, that's one of the more obvious adjustments. If the best player is playing well and Giannis is not on him, put Giannis on him. And so at that point, it's definitely seeming like that's a pretty big hint at something like that. And we know Giannis would take on that challenge if Giannis did it. This is just a tiny bit off topic here, but the frustrating thing with Bud is like Giannis did it in 2021. He defended Jimmy Butler for the majority of that series, and they swept him.
Yep.
And so it's not like, Bud never tried it. Bud did try it once, and it worked. And so it's like it didn't make any sense for him to, after it didn't work in the bubble because you didn't put him on him, it did work the next year you put him on him. You get to a playoff series against them again, and it's like, what should we do? Should we do the one that worked and we swept him, or the one where we lost in 5 games? Like, it seems pretty easy to me. But I mean, again, this isn't rocket science stuff. Like, breaking news: coach is going to put Giannis on the team's best player. But I mean, it's a step in the right direction compared to what was going on before. So
I don't know where Giannis is. Maybe it came up and I missed reading it somewhere. But Marzion Beauchamp, I saw afterwards, talked about the fact that he's heading to Greece tomorrow, and him and Giannis are going to work out for a week, and he's going to come back and spend the rest of his time in Milwaukee working out until it's time for Summer League. If Giannis is in Milwaukee, that would have been nice to have him there. I mean, I know you had, your bench there. Nice. And hey, Myers Leonard, I hadn't thought about this, but if Brook Lopez goes to skedaddling and if they don't bring him back, that's your starting center. That's your starting center.
No, he is not our starting center. No, he's not.
Be your starting center.
Hold on. We're spending all this time debating. We're spending all this time debating about, do we trade Bobby? And your whole argument is, well, if something happens to Brook Lopez, you need Bobby as your starting center. Why would Myers Leonard would not be? It would either be Giannis or Bobby Portis.
Giannis ain't playing center.
He will play center if he has to.
And Leonard is a much more, is a far better center than Bobby Portis. Bobby Portis is too small. And Leonard didn't look horrible when he got his limited minutes.
So if Myers Leonard, and I don't even agree with that. I'm not, I think as far as, I don't even know. I'm just saying if Bobby's a better player than Myers Leonard.
I got Marzion thrown for a loop with that one. Yeah.
So Bobby's a better player than Myers Leonard, that's for sure. And
yeah, fine.
If you're gonna sit here and say Myers Leonard's a better center than Bobby, why are you so against trading Bobby?
I'll be honest with you. I completely forgot the dude was even on the damn roster until I saw him in the picture today, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that dude. Is he still under contract?"
But he's terrible. I mean, no, sorry, Myers Leonard.
I don't think he's terrible. I think I disagree with you on that.
I forgot you were calling for him in the Heat series because I was like, it was like game 4, we go down 3-1, and I'm all upset, and you're like, we go on the post game, you're like, they need to put in Myers Leonard.
That's
I'm
right.
like, dude, get the heck out of here. Yep. Myers Leonard's your answer.
Yep. I think you're eventually, and we'll see how this plays out, but he can stretch the court and hit the 3 a little bit. Not a shot blocker like Brook Lopez, but there's not many in the league that are at that position. So all you need him to do is rebound, put your butt in somebody and box out and shoot a couple threes. I mean, that's really all you're asking the backup center to Brook Lopez to be at this point. And if Brook Lopez leaves, whoever the next guy is going to be asked to do the same thing because you're not going to expect them to shot block. But either way, I'm sidetracking the whole conversation by seeing him in that picture. But it is going to be interesting. Let's go to one other thing before we move on to the stats here. So the press conference gets done. Ty Windish and many others are like, where was the domestic abuse questions? Like, why didn't this get brought up? And I'll be honest, I didn't expect anybody to ask him anything about the domestic abuse. I honestly didn't. So when it ended, I was like, okay, well, that's what I figured was going to happen. No big deal. Because if you researched and read up on the domestic abuse thing, everything got dropped. He countersued for defamation or whatever, pretty much saying you lied and made the whole damn thing up. And now I'm going to go get me some money out of this deal and come back at you for it. So to me, I mean, there really wasn't much there if anybody actually read up on the situation. To the Milwaukee Bucks media and all media, good job. Because then what happened was, they broke up into one-on-ones. So then Eric Name had a chance. Ozarski had a chance. Everybody, Lori Nickel had a chance. And everybody got in there and was able to ask the question about that. And he answered it and said what I pretty much just said. Can't really get into details of the intricacies of everything necessarily, but pretty much said, yeah, pretty much did happen. Like, it's all crap. Let's move on with their life. Okay, fine. But it got asked. Bucks fans wanted to have it asked. It got asked, maybe not in the press conference, but in the one-on-ones. Either way, you can pretty much look anywhere and find quotes from him talking about it. So it was addressed if you haven't had a chance to go read everybody's take on it. All right, topic number 2. Thoughts on former Bucks head coach Terry Stotts returning as an assistant coach. Let's talk about this. I asked you before we started the show, literally seconds before the show, if we could come up with any other former head coach in Milwaukee that ever came back as an assistant coach later. I couldn't come up with one. You try to Google it and find it quick. You couldn't find one. So it's very rare to have this happen. When Terry Stotts was here, I was hard on Terry Stotts because I thought they were good. I thought he was screwing the whole damn thing up. And it was, first head coaching gig following George Karl and all that stuff. But but when I would go down to the Cousins Center and cover him, he was always super nice to me. Always got along, no matter all the crap I said on the air. Always was super cool. And he knew probably everything I was saying most of the time. Saw him years later at the Vegas Summer League. Still super nice guy, all of that. But he proved to me in Portland, dude, he can coach. Like he's a good coach. And when he was with George Karl, he was the offensive guy that got all the credit for what they ran on offense. He was the guy that got Portland to have the success they had by running the offenses that they did. Defense, but the offenses were good. It's a perfect complement to what you want for Adrian Griffin, I think. It's a former head coach, which we need some experience with him, I think we agree, and an offensive mind. And you get both in Stotts. Yes, I wanted Cassell. But Terry Stotts is a great hire. I absolutely love it. That's not official that I've seen yet. I haven't seen an email on Stotts. But it's an absolute great hire. And you have AG, a former Bucks player, former assistant coach with the Bucks. Terry Stotts, a former Bucks head coach, former assistant coach, both now coming back to coach this Milwaukee Bucks team with, potentially 2 Hall of Famers on it in Middleton and Giannis. That's a pretty cool story, Nathan Marzion.
Yeah, and I did see Griffin did confirm it, I think, today. That
he did in a quote. So,
yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, you hit it right on the head where with a guy, your head coach now is a younger guy and a defensive guy. So what's your ideal assistant coach? A guy with experience and an offensive guy. And that's exactly what they got. They got both of them in Terry Stotts. And so absolutely love it. I mean, it's definitely like that. Again, it was pretty much a dream scenario of getting a guy that both has experience, plenty of experience as an assistant coach and as a coach overall, and has 3 stints as a head coach in this league. And so, I think that's a home run for as an assistant. And just like you said, it kind of, if you were kind of iffy on the Griffin hiring to begin with, like this probably eased you a little bit and was like, okay, we have the offensive mind right there next to him. We have the experienced guy right there next to him. So questions about that shouldn't be as big as they were when they first hired him.
And look around the league. Borrego got hired to be an assistant. Then Fizdale got hired. He would have been nice in Milwaukee. I'd have taken Fizdale. So he got hired. Cassell got hired. So right away, all of these head coaches went and got their lead assistant first things first. And now the rest of these staffs will be filled out from here kind of going forward. We got a comment/question on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page from Joshua, who says, "What's up, guys? On the subject of coach, which I love the hire, do you two guys think there's any possibility of the Bucks reaching out to Portland for Lillard? And what do you think it would take to acquire?" Marzion?
A Lillard trade, I would actually listen to a podcast today where they talked about this, and Lillard trades are like, it's so hard to find a good one. It's so hard to find one where it not only, the Blazers would agree to it, but it also works. And like, there's not many out there. I don't see how the Bucks could pull it off. I'm sure they want to. I'm sure if they could, somehow flip like Drew to get Lillard, they would do it. But I don't think the Blazers would do that. I don't see why they would. And yeah, to me, it's just like, it's very unlikely that that's going to happen as much as we all want it to.
And as much as Lillard may want it to, possibly as well. I mean, he's been very much a Portland guy, but it feels like kind of that maybe the fan base out there is kind of turning on him a little bit, because you could see the frustration towards the end of the season about them maybe wanting to rebuild this thing with Wembanyama and just tank it to hell with it, just trade Lillard and let's kind of start over. So I don't know. We'll see where that one goes, but I agree with you. I don't think they can get Lillard. Topic number 3, report out there. Who's the guy? Schultz? Is that who had it out there?
Jake Fisher.
Jake Fisher. Chris Middleton being rumored to sign a long-term deal with the Bucks, or expected to sign a long-term deal with the Bucks, according to Jake Fisher, who, I'll be honest with you, I knew nothing about until like 2 or 3 years ago. We had him on the show once. I don't think never had him on again after that. So I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm not saying he's right, but it's something worth talking about on the podcast because it does involve Middleton, who, is going to opt out. We all expect, become a free agent, then sign a bigger deal going forward. He's not going to take the player option, I can't imagine, and then sign that big deal. This is what's interesting to me, Mr. Nathan Marzion. Follow Nathan at Nathan Marzion on Twitter. You can follow me at Sparky Radio. He signed a long-term deal. Now, it all depends on what you think is a long-term deal. When you say long-term deal, I think 5 years. That's what I view as long. If it's 3, that's I don't think that's a long-term deal. 5 is a year. 5 is a long-term deal. He signs a 5-year deal, then I'm all in on you can guarantee yourself Giannis is back when these 2 years are up, that he's going to re-sign for at least another 3 years after that, or whatever the case may be. If it's that long of a deal, if he signs a 3-year deal, which I don't consider long-term necessarily, but let's say it's a 3-year deal, then I think I still got to wait and see. I still think Giannis probably ends his, plays here his whole career, ends his career here, but you never know with certainty until we get to that point. Then I would still say, okay, it's kind of still open. He goes 5. Then I would have to believe there's been some type of conversation between the two of them. And then Giannis is probably here going for it, because those two guys are tight, right? With their kids growing up and all that. And that would make me feel real good if it's a 5-year deal. I know most of you Bucks fans won't think it's very good. And I'm sorry, but I would be okay with it, Marzion.
Yeah, this is very good news. To me, the sweet spot is like a 4-year deal. But looking at Bucks salary stuff, it is clear that, and I tweeted this yesterday, because I kind of have been thinking like, oh, Chris is probably gonna, accept his player option for this year, and then after that he might sign an extension. He's got to. What we need is for him to decline his player option and take, like a 4-year, $30 million a year deal, which is a very fair deal for both sides. Chris guarantees a contract for 4 years and is still getting paid a lot of money. And then for the Bucks, that lowers his, cap hit this year from what would be 40 to 30, because really looking at, with the new CBA and everything, the Bucks basically need to stay under a certain number. And so they essentially have about 45 to 50 million combined that they could give both Chris and Brooke if they want to stay under that number and keep their taxpayer mid-level exception to use another player. So if you have 45 to 50 million combined, if you're paying Chris alone 40, you basically can't pay Brooke. Or if you do pay Brooke, if you do pay Brooke, you're gonna have to then lose that taxpayer mid-level, which is just like, that's a opportunity to get another player. You're just throwing out the window. And so I'm sure obviously the Bucks are gonna sit down and talk about that with him and say, hey, if you can agree to, again, 4 for 120, you're guaranteed a contract for 4 years. Because again, with Chris's injury history, is it smart for him to go into a year, accept his player option, but go into a year where he doesn't have a contract guaranteed after this? He gets hurt, blows out his knee, and boom, he's done. Is that smart for, it might be smarter for him to take that 4-year deal. And 4 for 120 for him it's the equivalent essentially of him taking his $40 million player option and then accepting like a 3-year, $75 million extension on top of that, which is a very fair deal. Give him 4 for 120. Everyone's happy. It lowers his cap hit this year to 30. And that way you've got about 15 million per year that you can give to Brooke Lopez, which I'd have to think that that's about how much Brooke will get. And then you would stay under that. You'd be able to have that taxpayer mid-level to use on another player still. So, telling Chris, hey, if you take 10 million less this year and we give you a 4-year deal, longer-term deal, which is, again, that's what it sounds like this is going to be, that basically lets us sign Brooke and get another player. And I would have to assume that that's going to be what Chris wants to do.
I have to assume that he would laugh hysterically at you if you came at him with 4 at 120 and said, you are out of your damn mind.
Why?
Like, I'll go get 4 at 200 from somebody.
Chris is not getting 50 million a year.
I'm telling you right now, somebody is going to pay that dude more than $30 million to go play basketball for them. Tell you right now, he's going to get at least 40 a year.
I don't agree with that. I don't think people are paying him 40 million.
But
with his age and injury history, I don't think so. If he was fully healthy the last 2 years and balled out, I would agree. But I think there's plenty of concern from teams around the league that are like, I don't want to pay this dude $40 million a year. Do I think he could get 35? Yes. Do I think he would turn down $5 to $10 million to stay with the Bucks, where he is clearly a better option and would rather stay here with? Yes, absolutely. So
let's make you John Horst. Middleton opts out. So now you have this window to negotiate the deal before free agency opens up, right? Middleton goes, hey, man, I want 40, 45 a year. I got to be in somewhere in that area, or I got to go explore free agency. You're John Horst. You pay him what he wants and be done with it, Or do you go ahead? Just let me know before you sign somewhere else. And, if you can come up with somebody else to give you that type of money, then let us know and we'll let you know if we can match it. Do you play that game? Because sometimes when you play that game, player gets offended, like, oh, somebody else has to offer to me before you'll actually pay me that money? To hell with you. I'll go play somewhere else if they want to pay it to me. That's a tricky game. And I don't know what Middleton's going to ask for, but I would be absolutely shocked if he went to 30 million, if he went backwards. Like, I can't.
But but it's backwards for this year, but in the long term, it's not
30
that
million
far
a year
backwards.
over 4 years.
Yeah.
It's backwards for 4 years.
What do you mean? No,
4
but
at 120, that's 30 million a year.
Yes.
Right,
but 30
so
million
he's going backwards for 4 years. He didn't get a pay raise any of those years from where he's at right now.
30 million over 4 years compared to what he would get. He could get his 40 million for 1 year, but he could easily after that only get 25 million, which again is the same as what if getting paid 30 million over 4 years.
If he believes what you believe, if he thinks he's not worth a hill of beans anymore, or what you're saying, then okay, maybe.
It's not what he believes, it's what other teams believe. It's what other teams believe. It's not in his control what other teams will pay him.
True, but John Horst better be right. He better be right if he plays the game and says, Chris, I don't think you're worth that much. So if you think you are, go play the free agency market. Because if he does find a team, then you got to explain to Giannis why you didn't pay him.
You're going to pay Chris whatever which number one, the reason I believe he's going to take a longer term deal for a little bit less, he's in these meetings with the coach. He's clearly a big part. Like, to me, all signs are pointing that he's going to stay for a longer term deal. And he wants to, he said, I want to stay here. I have no reason to want to be anywhere else. I fully believe he would take a slight pay cut this year, but get paid over a longer period of time to stay with this team. I don't think he's going to demand the very, very maximum that he believes another team might give him. And so I think 30 million a year is still a lot of money. This isn't like he's going to be grossly underpaid.
I agree. Yes. But that's not
30 million.
When we're at this level, this isn't about 30 million. This is about stature in the NBA and how people respect you and look at you. That's what this is about.
What over the last look, I love Chris. What over the last 2 years would warrant someone to give him $40+ million?
Doesn't matter. Chris Middleton's gonna go.
Yes, it does matter because
I was hurt the last 2 years. You're right, but you know how good I am. I'm fine. I'm ready to go. If you don't trust me, if you don't believe in me, that's cool. I'll go on the free agency market. I'll find somebody that'll pay me the money.
But why would my services? That's what I'm asking. Why I don't think another team will pay him that money, because what over the last 2 years have we know how good he is. We know how good he can be. Why would another team, younger team, let's say, that has the cap space, because there's not a ton of teams that just have the cap space to go sign a guy for $50 million. A team like the Rockets that has cap space to go out and just sign Chris Middleton.
Well, that's going to be hard.
Why? Yeah, but why? Like, why in the world would a younger team like that want to get a 32-year-old Chris Middleton that has had injuries the last 2 years? What does that benefit them? And I just don't know why they'd be like. I don't know why we're assuming that a team is just willing to. Someone will give him $45 million a year.
Listen to me. You very well may be right. What I'm telling you is, if Middleton says, "I want this," and you look at him and go, "You ain't worth it. You haven't done jack in the last 2 years. You've been hurt, and nobody's going to pay you, Chris." And Chris goes, well, "I guess we'll find out." And he goes walking off into free agency. What are you going to tell Giannis if you lose him?
But here's the thing: if Chris said that,
he's got all the leverage. Because if you piss off Giannis and he leaves, you're screwed. It's over. People better understand this. Middleton has all the leverage. If Middleton wants X, they got to pay him X. Unless he wants to play your game, and Chris goes, "Hey, dude, I want to retire $1. I'll give you a hometown discount so I can stay with my guy Giannis here. I want to win a couple more championships." If Chris goes at it that way, God bless Chris Middleton, because it all works itself out then, and it comes out the way you want. But if Middleton decides I'm worth more, they got to pay him.
I mean, yes, they do. I'm 100%. You're not letting Chris Middleton go, because if you let him go, you just lose him for nothing. So absolutely. But him being involved in all these conversations with the coach was a sign to me that, okay, this guy wants to be here. They've come to some common ground. and now this report coming out that they want to reach a long-term agreement. I don't think the Bucks would lock in a $45 million a year agreement with him over 4 years. I don't think that's the case. I would bet money it's $35 million or less.
We'll find out. We'll see how this whole thing plays out. I hope you're right. I hope he takes essentially a pay cut to stay here and play with him. I would be shocked. But then, okay, so let me ask you this. So let's say they go that way. So then what do they do with Brook Lopez? They go to Lopez and go, you need to take a pay cut too to play here because you're old and just had a back surgery a couple of years ago? Do you expect Lopez to take a pay cut to say too?
I expect these two players in particular to take a little bit less than they could possibly. Yeah. Yes. Why should we believe differently? Why should we believe differently?
Because it doesn't happen in sports. This does not happen. It does not happen. You had it happen with the Heat, where you got these guys, certain guys that take less money in Wade, Bosh, and LeBron for a short time, and then they all got their max money later and all got paid. But now you're saying you want two dudes, one of which is probably a Hall of Famer in Middleton, and the other dude, Brook Lopez, is probably the best defensive center in the NBA or one of the best defensive centers in the NBA, to both take pay cuts. I don't know, man. Maybe it happens. The power of Giannis and them wanting to play with Giannis. Maybe that's what wins out at the end of the day.
Number one, they're not huge pay cuts. I mean, you could pay Chris $30 million a year, and you could pay Brook about $15 million a year, which that's nothing insane. That is not they're older players. These aren't young guys that can go out and get a ton of money. And if you're an older player at the back end of your career, my guess would be you're like, I want to win some more championships. I want to go out and I want to spend these remaining years not just on some trash team making $5 million more a year, but not winning anything.
They got rings.
Chris Middleton literally did. You said, when have we ever seen this in sports? Chris did this before when he was offered his max contract. He took less than the max. He did that.
So you actually do it again.
I expect him. I expect him to say,
keep being the sacrificial lamb, Chris. Nathan Marzion supports him 100%. He's got your back.
Telling you right now, I have no reason to believe that Chris is like, I want $45 million a year. I have no reason to believe that that's the case because that's not, he's never given us that sign.
If I was representing Brook Lopez or Chris Middleton, either one of them, especially Brook Lopez, dude, this may be your last chance for a big contract. Like, you balled out. You had a hell of a year, Brook. What are we doing? Let's just go see what happens. You can still go back to Milwaukee. Let's just see what kind of money you can get that you want to turn down and play in Milwaukee. Let's just see what the number is. Let's see how close they are to what you might be able to get.
Now,
and then make up your mind and see what happens. Because Bud's not there anymore. He was boys with Bud, so he's gone. But it's still Giannis. And Giannis loves him, clearly. And I think he loves Giannis. So, again, the power of Giannis to get these guys to stay and play with him, which is great. Listen, I don't want either one of them to leave. I think they are going to go to the next tax apron. I think they are going to lose the mid-level exception because both of these guys are going to have to get paid a lot of money in order to keep them. And that's just going to be part of the deal. And you are going to have to run it back with virtually the same damn roster again. More than likely. Unless they trade the guy Marzion wants the hell out of Milwaukee and Bobby Portis. Then, then maybe you have a little bit of a change up in the roster.
Yeah, hey, trade Bobby. The Pacers need a starting power forward, they said today. Trade Bobby for some picks, get rid of that salary, and all of a sudden you can pay Chris and Brook more. Anyway,
Portis for Brogdon. Let's go. No, go ahead. Sorry. Brogdon's not there anymore.
But if a team really is, I know the Rockets said they were interested in Brook, which again, I don't know why a young team would want Brook Lopez. Like, I just don't understand that. But if they're really willing to give him $30 million and it's like, okay, you can get double what you're making here, then yes, I'd understand why Brook. But I don't see that happening. I see Brook
20 on the open market, 20 a year.
But you honestly think that Brook would leave the Bucks because he can get 20 instead of 15?
Well, how long are both deals?
2-3 years, whatever.
I mean, I don't know.
That seems insane to me.
All I'm saying is, if I'm representing Brook, I say let's just go see what we can get. That's all. Yeah, and if it's close enough to where you're like, that's not enough to get me to leave Milwaukee, cool. Then you sign with the Bucks and call it a day.
Hold on. So we're saying Brook can get to about 20 million. We're guessing. Well, let's make our estimate. Brook can get about 20 million. So to me, it's very realistic for him to say, I'll take 5 million less to stay on the Bucks, stay on a championship team where
15 million less over 3 years, if that's what it is.
I know my role perfectly. I'm very, everyone loves me here. We're going to be a title contender, all that. What do you think?
Does he know his role? It's a brand new coach.
What do you think Chris can get?
40 at least.
I mean, who's paying him $40 million? Who's paying Chris $40 million?
He's a good ball player. He's a clutch ball player at end of games. He's an okay defender. He can create. You yourself have talked numerous times about, well, if they would have had Middleton that Celtics series, they would have won because the Bucks didn't have this. He's a good ball player. Again, everybody can hate on Middleton in Milwaukee. Hate him all you want. There are guys around the NBA that respect how good he is and would love to have Chris Middleton on their team. And he's a good teammate from all accords. I've not heard anything negative about him. We'll see. Maybe you're right. Maybe they both take pay cuts and the power of Giannis works. And another reason to say God bless Giannis, because that would be amazing if they're able to keep him for another 2 or 3 years and extend and continue this window being open. Because once they're gone, it's going to be a while, more than likely.
Now again, if I was the Bucks, would I pay Chris 40, 45 to stay on the Bucks? Yes, because this is the perfect situation for him. I just don't see another team that it isn't a very good situation
as a GM,
for
then
him.
Marzion, then you're gonna roll the dice.
But he's not asking. I'm telling you right now, he's not asking for $45 million. He's not asking for 45.
Good luck in free agency. Come back to us if somebody gives you that much money.
I'm just telling you, he's not asking for $45 million.
He should be.
No,
he just got hurt. You don't know how much longer
so he should ask for $45 million because I just got hurt. Give me $45 million.
No, because like you said, he's getting older. This is probably his one last shot to get a big deal again. This is probably the last shot he's going to have at another big deal. This is it. Last time. Here we go. One more time. Giannis got 2 more big contracts probably left in him. This is Middleton's last one, and it's definitely Brooks' last one. And to say, I want you both to take less in your last chance at big money. And again, you could say, they're multimillionaires. They don't need any more money, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But there's also, like I said before, there's also status to this because everybody knows what everybody's making. Everybody can see it. Players union, they're going to know what everybody's doing too, right? Yeah, they frown on people taking pay cuts over there at the players union.
4 for 120 at 32 years old coming off injury is pretty big money to me.
Sure it is. But
so that's why I'm like, this isn't like we're asking Chris to take $15 million a year. No, you're 4 for 120. That's a pretty big payday for a guy that.
Would you ever ask Giannis to take less?
That's Giannis, man.
Oh,
no.
Yeah.
I'm not asking Giannis to take less. It's Giannis.
It's Giannis. Big smile on his face. It's Giannis. Yeah, but you're asking these other 2 guys who are coming towards the end to take pay.
They know they're not the guy. They know that they're a compliment, and that's part of the reason.
Middleton's never had the opportunity to be the guy.
I'm not asking. But he's not the guy. We know that. But I'm not asking Giannis to take less because Giannis can go wherever he wants and make that team a championship contender. Chris Middleton cannot go wherever he wants and have this same type of success and be this crucial to a team and be a title contender on another team. He can go to a team and that team could suck.
What if Chris Middleton went to the Lakers with LeBron and Anthony Davis? Are they a championship team?
Sure, the Lakers don't have the money to pay him.
No, but I'm just thinking, could he be a finishing piece in other places if it's a sign trade or whatever?
But if you need him as a finishing piece, then you don't have the money to pay him because you already have the pieces. Like a team that has the money to give Chris Middleton $45 million or whatever is not going to be a team that's one piece away. Because if you were one piece away, you don't have that much money. That's part of the reason I'm like, no team's going to give him that much.
I'm going to have to go. I'm going to have to go look. I'm interested in this.
I will say if there's a team that's willing to like pay him that much and trade for him, then yeah, like I'd be okay signing and trading him or whatever under that circumstance of like, okay, we'll give you a ton of money, but we're going to trade you because at least you're getting stuff back for him. And
you cannot sign and trade him.
I'm just saying under that extreme circumstance where you want that, if he's really demanding that much money and there's another team that's like, we will take that, then yes, I would do that.
No, you can't. You'll ruin Giannis.
Why?
You can't do it.
You will not ruin Giannis.
You will ruin your relationship with Giannis.
Did you not?
Trade
Giannis said after the season, they asked him about it, and Giannis was like, hey, it's a business. He's got to do what he's got to do. Like, Giannis understands this stuff. He's not just like, oh, they need to keep him because he's my friend. And like, if they can get it, and I'm not, obviously it has to be a good deal. I'm not saying trade Chris for nothing. But if you can get a decent bit back for him, get a little bit younger, get some good guys in here, totally hypothetical.
Yeah.
Giannis will understand that.
Again.
But again, that's not going to happen because
everybody else, right?
That's not going to happen because Chris has been in these coaching discussions, which totally tells you, okay, he's going to be with the team. He's going to sign a long-term deal. It's going to be 4 for 120 or 4 for 130, and that's going to be that. Write it down right now.
Okay.
Chris Middleton signs 4-year, $120 million deal.
We shall see. Last topic, NBA Finals. They're tied up 1 apiece as we record this, streaming live on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page currently. Also can download it for free on your Odyssey app after we post it, like we always can for the Green and Growing podcast, or download wherever you download your favorite podcasts at. And then Marzion, is Miami going to win this bad boy now that we have seen 1-1 coming out of Denver?
Man, I mean, midway through the game 2, even in the third quarter, late third quarter, end of the third quarter, I really thought, okay, this honestly might be a sweep. I don't want to pick against Miami. They just have that magic. They have obviously the coach that you never want to count out, you never want to bet against.
Yep.
And their shooters are just absurd. It feels like at any point, whenever they're down 10, you feel like they're almost winning the game because that's right where they want teams. Screw it. I'm picking Miami. I'm picking them. I'm picking Miami in 6.
Yeah, in Miami, not in Denver.
That would, for them to win in 6 probably requires them to win the next 2, which I don't really see, but I'm going to say Miami in 7. They're going to win game 7 on the road.
Malone questioning effort in an NBA Finals. I would lose my ever-loving mind on a post-game show if you lose a finals game and your head coach is going, just didn't play hard. Just didn't really want it. I lose my mind. Like, how are we having this conversation? It's a chance to win an NBA championship. None of y'all got rings. How is this a thing? This isn't LeBron, Wade, and Bosh, and they got rings. This ain't Steph with a handful of rings that, they're just kind of going through the motions in game 2. They've got so many rings. They know they'll just turn it on. This is the Denver damn Nuggets. Like, Joker needs a damn ring here at the end of the day, and the head coach is questioning them playing hard. And then after game 1 said they didn't play a good game that game, everybody said, get out of here. Shut up. You didn't play well. Get out of here. Hey, after game 2, he's like, I told you we didn't play well in game 1, and tonight didn't look like we want to be here. I mean, that type of stuff. What? That doesn't happen a lot with Spoelstra teams, especially on the playoffs. And now this Tyler Hero thing, play or not play, depending on who you listen to, I don't know if he's even going to play in this dang series. It doesn't sound like he's close. Sounds like he's still got pain and stuff after he shoots. So he may not even see Tyler Hero. The Duncan Robinson scowl or whatever the hell that was, because he got 10 points in a quarter. Mean mug. Dude, settle down, man. I mean, you didn't score 30 in the fourth. You scored 10. Like, settle down.
For a role player, if Pat Connaughton had a 10
highly expensive role player.
If Pat Connaughton had a 10-point fourth quarter in the finals to win the game, hey, do whatever you want. If you want a mean mug, if you want to jump up on the scorer's table, I don't care.
More than Pat Connaughton, isn't he?
Yeah, a lot more.
Yeah,
I think he's like, what is he, 90 million?
Making way too much damn money for what he does.
Yeah. But yeah, the thing about Miami is they're the most mentally tough team in the league, and they just consistently play the hardest. Like you're never like, they're just not trying. They're out of it today. They're always fighting. And if they lose, it's more just, okay, they didn't play well. It's not a matter of effort. It's not a matter of they weren't focused or anything like that. It's just like, maybe they missed their shots today. Maybe Jimmy didn't have his best game, but they are just the most consistently playing hard, and the team that when they're down, I still believe in them. And I still, they're just so mentally tough that I'm like, I never can count them out. And I'm sick of picking against them that I'm like, I don't dislike them. Like, I just was like, I don't think they'll beat Boston, and then once I went to 7, I'm like, I don't think they'll win this series anymore. And then they win that. Now it goes to Denver, and it's like, I don't think they're going to beat Denver. I'm picking them. I'm done. I'm picking the Heat to win the series.
Can I just say on the way out here that doing this with video, and if you're watching on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page, you can see it as well. It's very distracting because I keep feeling like there's a ghost in your room as the Fear the Deer flag just keeps blowing in the air from your ceiling fan. Yeah. And I keep looking at it like, what the heck is going on over there? But yeah, that's what it is. I keep thinking there's a ghost in Marzion's room. I'm sorry. It's just very distracting. Follow Nathan Marzion on Twitter at Nathan Marzion, and follow me at Sparky Radio, Green and Growing Podcast. We'll record another one coming up on Thursday evening. Enjoy the rest of your day, and make sure everyone have a good day. That's all we ask. Have a good day. Toodles.